Democracy, philosophy, theater, geometry, the Olympics, the very alphabet you are reading these words in. Almost everything that built the modern mind was invented by a handful of quarreling people on a few sun-baked rocks. They were never one country. They were rival city-states who spent most of their time insulting, cheating, and stabbing each other. And yet together they lit a fire that never went out. From a bull-worshipping palace on Crete to a boy king who conquered the known world before he turned 30. This is the entire history of ancient Greece. Grab a spear and a philosophy book. Rewind 4,000 years. On the island of Crete rises Europe's first great civilization, the Minoans. Rich sea traders who built a sprawling palace, painted dolphins on their walls, and worshipped the bull. Their legend gave us the Minotaur, a bull-headed monster prowling a labyrinth beneath the palace, fed on human sacrifice. The maze was probably just the palace itself, probably. A volcano and mysterious raiders wiped the Minoans out. Power passed to the mainland, to the warlike Mycenaeans, gold-masked kings in mighty stone fortresses. And one of their kings started history's most famous war. The story goes that a Trojan prince stole a Greek king's wife, Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships. A vast Greek army sailed to Troy and besieged the great walled city for 10 long years. 10 years of stalemate until the Greeks tried a trick. They built an enormous wooden horse, hid soldiers inside, and pretended to sail home. The Trojans dragged it through their own gates. That night, the war ended. Then, around 1200 BC, the whole eastern Mediterranean collapsed. Cities burned, trade died, even writing was forgotten. Greece fell into a dark age that lasted 300 years. But from the ashes came reinvention. The Greeks borrowed an alphabet from Phoenician traders and made it their own, the ancestor of the letters on your screen right now. And a blind poet named Homer sang the old wars back to life. The Greeks organized into hundreds of independent city-states, each called a polis. A town, its farmland, its own laws, its own fierce pride, fiercely free and fiercely allergic to ever uniting. Hungry for land, they founded colonies all around the Mediterranean and Black Sea, from Spain to Ukraine. They spread olives, wine, coins, and their language. The Greek world was now enormous. 2 city-states would tower over all the rest. The first worshipped one thing above all, war, Sparta, a society that turned itself into a single, permanent army. A Spartan boy belonged to the state. At 7, he was taken from his mother and thrown into the agoge, a brutal training camp of hunger, beatings, and combat, designed to forge the deadliest soldiers in the world. Their whole economy rested on the helots, a huge enslaved population who farmed the land so Spartans could train full-time. Sparta lived in constant fear of a revolt it could barely control. Spartan women, meanwhile, were the freest in Greece. They owned property, exercised in the open, and were expected to be as tough as the men. A mother handed her son his shield with the words, "Come back with this or on it." The result was terrifying. A small elite of full-time warriors, the finest heavy infantry on earth. Sparta didn't build grand temples or write great books. Sparta built men who did not break. The second great city was Sparta's total opposite. Loud, artistic, seafaring, argumentative Athens. And Athens gave the world an idea so radical it still runs half the planet, rule by the people. It didn't start pretty. Athens lurched through greedy aristocrats, angry farmers drowning in debt, and outright tyrants. Something had to give before the city tore itself apart. Then reformers, above all Cleisthenes, did the unthinkable. They handed power to the ordinary citizen. Every free man got a vote, a voice, and a turn to rule. They called it democracy, people power. It was messy, loud, and only for free men, never women or slaves. But for the first time in history, a city was run not by a king or a priest, but by argument. Get ready for a lot of arguing. But far to the east loomed a superpower that made every Greek city look tiny: the Persian Empire, the largest empire the world had ever seen, ruled by the King of Kings, Darius the Great. When Greek cities in Asia rebelled and Athens sent help, Darius was enraged. He swore revenge and kept a servant to remind him 3 times at every dinner, "Master, remember the Athenians." 490 BC, a massive Persian army landed at Marathon, north of Athens. Wildly outnumbered, the Athenian hoplites did the unthinkable. They charged the beach at a dead run, straight into the Persian line. The Greeks crushed them. Legend says a runner named Phidippides sprinted the 26 miles back to Athens with the news, gasped victory, and dropped dead. Today we call that distance a marathon. 10 years later, Darius's son Xerxes came back for revenge with the largest army of the ancient world, perhaps hundreds of thousands of men, bridging the sea itself to reach Greece. It looked hopeless. To buy time, a Spartan king named Leonidas held the narrow pass of Thermopylae with just 300 Spartans and a few thousand allies. For 3 days, that tiny force held back an empire. Betrayed by a local who showed the Persians a secret path, Leonidas and his 300 were surrounded. They fought to the last man. They lost the pass, but they gave Greece something priceless: time and a legend. The Persians burned and evacuated Athens, but the crafty Athenian Themistocles lured their giant fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their numbers became a trap. The nimble Greek ships tore them apart. The mighty Persian invasion collapsed. Against every expectation, the tiny, squabbling Greek cities had beaten the greatest empire on earth, and the biggest winner was a proud, victorious, cash-rich Athens. What followed was one of the most dazzling bursts of creativity in human history, the Golden Age of Athens. Led by the brilliant statesman Pericles, the city poured its wealth into beauty and ideas. Down in the theater, Athenians invented drama as we know it, tragedy and comedy. Thousands packed stone amphitheaters to watch masked actors and weep, laugh, and think about what it means to be human. And on the sacred hill of the Acropolis, they raised the Parthenon, a temple to their patron goddess Athena, so perfectly proportioned that architects still study it today. It was the crown of the Greek world. A man named Herodotus wandered the known world collecting stories and writing them down as the first true history, earning him the title Father of History. Others began asking how the universe worked without blaming the gods. This was the peak. Athens was rich, beautiful, brilliant, and more than a little arrogant. And nothing annoys a rival superpower quite like a neighbor who won't stop telling everyone how great they are. Athens also birthed something that would outlast every empire: philosophy, the love of wisdom. And its most famous, most annoying practitioner was a barefoot, snub-nosed man named Socrates. Socrates wrote nothing. He just wandered the city asking relentless questions until powerful people looked like fools. Predictably, the powerful people did not enjoy this. So Athens put him on trial and sentenced him to death. Given a chance to flee, Socrates refused, calmly drank a cup of poison hemlock, and died as he lived, proving a point. His student Plato founded a school, the Academy, and wrote his ideas down. Plato's student Aristotle tutored a certain Macedonian prince, and between them, these 3 men set the agenda for Western thought for 2,000 years. But the Golden Age was built on a fault line. Democratic, naval Athens and militaristic, land-based Sparta could not share a world. In 431 BC, all of Greece was dragged into a brutal civil war. Athens hid behind its great walls, relying on its navy for supplies. It seemed clever until a horrific plague swept the packed city, killing perhaps a third of the population and Pericles himself. The war dragged on for 27 brutal years. Athens gambled everything on a massive invasion of Sicily and lost an entire fleet and army in a catastrophe it never recovered from. Ironically, Sparta only won by taking Persian gold to build a navy of its own. In 404 BC, a starving Athens finally surrendered. Its walls were torn down to the sound of victory flutes. But nobody really won. Decades of war had left every Greek city exhausted, broke, and bitter. They had spent their golden age destroying each other, and to the north, a kingdom they'd always mocked was quietly getting stronger. To the north lay Macedon, a rough kingdom the polished southern Greeks dismissed as half-barbarian. Then it got a genius king, Philip II, who turned it into a military machine. Philip's secret weapon was the phalanx reborn, dense blocks of soldiers wielding the sarissa, an 18-foot pike, a hedge of spear points no infantry on earth could break. He conquered Greece with it. One by one, the proud old city-states fell or submitted. Athens and Thebes made a last stand and were crushed. After centuries of fierce independence, Greece finally had a single master. It only took a foreigner to do it. But Philip had an even greater weapon at home, a fierce, brilliant, ambitious son, a boy taught by Aristotle himself, who wept that his father might conquer everything and leave nothing for him. Even as a boy, Alexander was extraordinary. When no one could tame a magnificent, terrified warhorse, the young prince noticed the horse was afraid of its own shadow and turned it toward the sun. He mastered the wild stallion Bucephalus, who would carry him to the ends of the earth. His father reportedly said, "My son, find yourself a bigger kingdom. Macedon is too small for you." Then, at a wedding feast, King Philip was suddenly assassinated, stabbed by one of his own bodyguards. In the chaos, the 20-year-old Alexander seized the throne of Macedon and command of all Greece. He crushed a rebellion, secured his kingdom, and then turned his eyes east, toward the vast Persian Empire that had once burned Athens. With a small, superb army, he set out to conquer the entire known world. In just a few staggering years, he would smash the Persian Empire, found cities from Egypt to Afghanistan, and reach the edge of India, never losing a single battle. But that world-shaking story is an episode all its own. The independent Greek city-states were gone forever, but their ideas were just beginning their conquest. Alexander spread Greek language, art, and thought across 3 continents, an age we call Hellenistic. And every 4 years, we still gather the nations to compete in games first held in a field at Olympia, the Olympics. Naked athletes and olive-wreath crowns, now with slightly more clothing. Democracy, trial by jury, geometry and the atom, theater and history, the Olympic torch, even the word idea is Greek. When Rome rose, it simply copied the Greeks and passed them on to us. A few small cities on a few rocky shores asked how we should live, how we should rule, and what is true, and never stopped arguing about it. We're still arguing. If you enjoyed the debate, subscribe. Next time, the boy who conquered the world.